Awesome. Will you please welcome Big Daddy Weave to the stage? So I'm gonna start way down here. Where are you guys coming from just now? You come all the way up to SoulFest. Like where are you coming from right now?
We're coming from Nashville, Tennessee.
From Nashville all the way up here.
Yeah, we flew up to Boston and way late flight that kept getting delayed, so we were at the airport for like 4 extra hours and got to see so much of our airport. And,
it's not a bad airport to be stuck.
It's fine, you know. So anyway, so then we finally got here. I think at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and there in Boston. And thankfully our driver and our bus was there for us, so we all crashed out hard in the bunks and woke up here at the ski mountain.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's good to sleep while driving unless you're this drive.
There you go.
Yeah, it's good. So, Joe, where are you? So you live in Nashville now.
I live just outside of Nashville, a place called Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
MTSU is there and everything, so it's like Nashville without as much traffic. So I like it down here.
Well, so listen to this. So y'all live in Nashville or around Nashville together as a whole crew. They don't own a house together. It's not like this the Big Daddy Weave compound. But are any one of you from Nashville originally? Everyone's from somewhere else. So Joe, where are you from originally?
I'm probably the worst of all of these guys when it comes to that question. So I've lived so many places. I was born in Kentucky, then I moved immediately to Georgia, and then it was East Tennessee for 7 years, then it was a different part of Georgia, and then it was West Tennessee, and then it was Southern Illinois, and then it was Mobile, Alabama, and now I'm back to
Were you on the run from the law? What did you do? What did you do, and how bad was it? And how often were you in that situation?
Well, you know, my dad was a music evangelist for 36 years,
Okay.
and so it's very similar to the military.
His crime was the gospel.
There you go, the crime, that's right. So we were in the Lord's Army. You know, it's like, oh, was your dad in the military? He's like, yeah, the Lord's
That's
Army.
right.
Yeah. So,
That's good.
So yeah, for 36 years, and so anytime there was a church that needed some help in some areas, and then, you know, and it's like, hey, can you and your family come? And then Dad did a lot of foreign mission work and everything. So we were based out of these different churches all over these different states and stuff, and then he would do all the foreign mission stuff also and fly in and out. But then when he was home, he was part of the staff, and then we got to connect with him again, thankfully, and all that stuff, you know. So anyway, yeah, that was kind of my life, was growing up in all these different places. But I will say Central Tennessee, Murfreesboro is my favorite of all the places I live.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I do love the mountains though, so East Tennessee is like, if I can sneak away to the Smokies, that's kind of like my go-to.
You got a place to go.
Yeah.
Now, you also are not from Nashville, and you said
correct. I'm Jeremy.
You're Jeremy, and you are from.
Hello. There we go.
And
Hi.
where is original home for you?
Grew up in Alabama, all the way close to the Gulf Coast, and stayed there until I got married and lived there for the first year of our marriage, and then we moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and have been there for the past 16 years at that point.
Which we talked about outside. Like, you've been in Nashville for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
When you go back to Alabama, does it feel like home? Does Nashville feel like home? When I say home, like, which place sparks in your heart for home?
Definitely Nashville now, being, you know, having my own family and 3 kids and my wife being there in Nashville. But family is all still down in Alabama. And so that doesn't necessarily feel like home, but it feels like that's where family is.
That's
you know?
good.
So
That's really good.
Yeah.
Cool. Where are you from originally?
So I am originally from Charleston, West Virginia.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And I was born there, lived there, you know, my whole childhood life. Lived in Nashville for a short couple of years when I was a kid, but moved back to West Virginia. And then I've been in Nashville now for almost 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I lived in kind of the south part of Nashville for about 14 years. Just moved to Murfreesboro, actually, a little bit north of Joe back in January. So I'm down in Murfreesboro.
Which is how a lot of people talk about it in the area. They're like, are you north of Joe or are you south of Joe? You'd be like at a cafe in Hillsboro and be like, I live a little east of Joe.
Well, it's a little crazy. I didn't realize how big Murfreesboro really is.
It's huge.
It is a huge town.
You just missed the joke though. Jeremy said everyone is north of Joe. I mean, that's yes.
It's true.
I am vertically challenged compared to these people. I have no problem with that.
Oh, that's good.
That was a good joke, Jeremy. That's hilarious.
Thank you.
That's very good. That's very good.
I do all those off mic.
We'll now establish a rule that all really good jokes should be on mic from now on. Let's capture the moment. West Virginia, still have family there?
Yeah, all my family is there.
Yeah.
I'm the odd one out. I'm the one that moved away to the big city, and
Yeah, man.
to pursue the music dream. So, yeah.
Good. And for you, does Nashville feel like home 20 years in, or does it feel like that's the town you work in, and that like when you go home to West Virginia, that's home?
No, Nashville is home.
That's good, man.
It feels like home, to me. Going back to see my family is great. There's good times, but man, it's home now for me is Nashville. That's where I just feel more at home myself, being in my house and doing what I do in town.
I love that real quiet, quick shared moment we all had when he said, going home to see family is great, and then everyone in the room said, but. That's good. Where are you originally from?
Originally from the Gulf Coast, down around Pensacola, Florida.
Yeah.
And where it's...
You're a Floridian.
Yeah.
You're what's wrong with America.
But yeah, it's depends on where you're from. You know what I mean? It's like I saw a shirt the other day that said "Make America Florida." I was like, well,
That's not bad. I
was like, I can never wear any of those shirts. They're never in plus size. You know what I mean? So it's like I just comment on other people's shirts.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I got nothing.
You avoid the conflict.
It's good.
From Pensacola, end up in Nashville. Did you move there for music?
Yeah. Well, I said I would never go there.
To Nashville.
Which, as you understand, in the Lord, that's like volunteering to go do what you said you would never do.
The Lord loves that.
He will show you. He will show you.
Especially if you're not talking to him. If you're like, I'm never going. You talking to me? I'm never going.
I was
really?
like, no, God, I'm not going. We're never going. It's the center of the music business, and I feel like if you have a ministry heart, like the business side of things is the conflict. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gives you some other reason to have to think about doing what you do. And I always hated that, and I always felt like there was kind of a reprieve from that where we were from down south. You know? So,
which is part of why I ask about like home and roots.
Sure.
Because for a lot of folks, I mean, Nashville, it's a very different town than it was 20 years ago. Like very, very different town than it was 20 years ago. It was very much like you would move there just for the business. And it was like folks who lived in Nashville they were not in Nashville to live there. They were there to work there. Over time, it's become a place where you could actually live and feel home. This question is really different now than it was 15, 20 years ago for a lot of folks. That sense of family, that sense of home. Talk about like, because you guys are like, what, 15 years in as a band?
23 this year.
Are you 23 now?
Yeah, 23 this year.
23 years in. Give it up for 23 years.
This fall, right? It's like kind of ish, right?
Does this still feel, this is a real question, does this still, as a ministry, as a place to like put your soul and hand it over to people, does it still feel like home? Does that conflict still exist, that like it's a business, it's a work, it's a ministry? Does it still feel like home?
Sure.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, absolutely. I used to tell people, because we were gone so often, I don't remember exactly how many dates at one point. We got close to 200 at one point, which was crazy. But I used to tell people that Big Daddy Wee was the best church that I was ever a part of. And they were like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So, well, I realized that everyone back home, and they talk about, on Sunday in our church, and it's like, yeah, whenever I was able to be in my hometown, and I would go to the church that my family, we were all connected in. But on the road, we were doing church. We were doing fellowship. We were doing, and in some ways, it was more authentic and more, there's a thing about church to where if you want to, you can avoid problems. True. You can avoid people. You can say, you know what, as long as I can get through this hour or whatever, I won't have to deal with that person for another week. You can't do that on a 45-foot long container that's traveling down the road, and if you may have 175 dates, well, that's not even including to get to the dates and getting back from the dates. So most of we'd spend so much of our time together, and you can't avoid issues. You actually have to deal with things. And so there's a lot of things that we would grow in, and we would grow in that together as a band, and the struggle and the friction is real. We fight more over the years as brothers because that's there's, like none of these guys are like me. And it's like, man, that's so annoying. None of these guys are like me. You know, it's like, why can't everybody just be like me?
All of them are north of you.
Yeah, you know, they're all taller than me too. Anyway, so it's just one of those things that, you know, God really exposes the self-centeredness in your life as you're around all these other people. That's like, wait a minute, you know, and I'm seeing it from my perspective. I'm not seeing it from their perspective. And so as you get to do life together, and then really it's like, well, you're doing fellowship together, you're doing church together, you get to see a whole nother dynamic of what church and fellowship is supposed to look like. So I'm very thankful for my church body of almost 23 years, and you know, it's unfortunate a lot of people don't get to experience what really that's supposed to look like, and I think that's what this has been. So, and we get to play music, so that's fun, you know.
There's my buddy who produces music in Los Angeles. He has this little trick he plays on folks. He'll have like a new band come in, and because he's produced a bunch of interesting people, they'll be like, hey, you know, what do you think about our music? And they want his opinion. And what he says is fascinating. He goes, listen, if you stick together and you just kind of keep at it, you'll be around for a long time, which is like a non-answer. Yeah, right. But the other side of the coin is what you just got to is like if you stick together and you keep at it for a long time, that discipline actually does bear fruit. And over the course of years, you actually become someone whose art is actually worth paying attention to. Right. And part of what you just said was beautiful. And I think it's part of why folks connect with what you do, is there has been a refining process over the course of years, personally, spiritually, and even, you know, financially and economically. Like you're different people, you're more refined, and the offering you make is more deeply human. And Christ is more present in what you do because it's been 23 years. You could have gone in and it was just the business, but over the course of time, you have to become people because Christ is doing a work in you. What's that look like for you, Jeremy, in terms of like years on the road, like being gone? Are you a road person where like you would travel if it wasn't for rock and roll, or are you more of a homebody? How's that fly?
You know, it changes over the years as you grow and as you have young kids. And my wife and I have been married 20 years this year. And we have an 11-year-old, an almost 9-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So we have quite the gambit going on 20 years here.
Yes, you do.
And so as, you know.
It would be enough if you just said you had a 2-year-old. But then.
I'm telling you, 40, almost 43, and with a 2-year-old, that looks a lot different than when you're in your 30s or younger. You know, this year I think has been really special. This past year of dealing with COVID and us being home a lot. I think one of the things that it's interesting because, like I said, we've been married 20 years, but we signed a record contract like 2 or 3 weeks after my wife and I got married. We had actually decided not to do it, and then I remember Mike coming to our house after we were married. And it's like, hey, I think we made a mistake and think we should actually sign this record deal. And so, like a month later, we were up in Nashville. We were living in Alabama at the time, but we're up in Nashville recording. And so, my wife and our marriage has been on the road our entire marriage. So, COVID for us was, wow, this is the first time we've had a chunk of time together. Are we going to be able to handle this?
Yes.
We've never had more than like a month max together, you know, straight.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the beautiful things about that was for us, it was like, oh, you know what? We really do like each other. This is pretty awesome. And it was something for us that was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we don't have to just exist being on the road or whatever. So it's kind of like, because wherever they are, where my wife and kids are, that like we were talking about home earlier, that's home wherever they are. And so for me, it's like, man, I'm always going to have a yearning to be with them as much as I can. And so I think, you know, as we have matured as a band and trying to figure out life as dads, life as family, with family, we're trying to learn how to do it smarter. So the days of 175 days on the road, it's like, okay, we can't do that anymore. No. So learning how to do it smarter, doing less shows, making them kind of hold together a little bit more, helps us to keep that priority, and it helps us be fresher when we're actually out on the road, to be able to enjoy being on the road a little bit more.
That's really good. Can you talk about a little bit, like, and I'm going to bring, because of your history in West Virginia, it's like, that's like I mean, West Virginia is like, you know, steel towns and industry, like the music industry, as you communicated, like the conflict between like this, you know, emotive, spiritual exercise, and then like the work, the businessy thing. talk about like the actual struggle as a person in it to like navigate. You need to make money doing what you do. You want to make it a job. You want people to respect it as a job, but you also don't want to just be cold-hearted business person where like, here's the contract, that's the end of the thing. Like, can you talk about navigating that over the course of years, like for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think the desire to play music, came at such a young age, and wanting to figure that out, but also figuring out I've got to be able to support myself and make a living, and support a family down the road and all this kind of stuff. I think there was just a time in my life, or for me especially, I was in country music for a number of years and traveling on the road doing that. And it was more of business. It's like, I've got to be, this good. I have to perform this way. I have to act this way to keep this gig so I can stay on the road to make the money that I need and, to do the things that I need to do.
Yeah. Joining
Big Daddy Weave, it wasn't anything like that. It was more of a ministry mindset, which several years prior to me joining, that's what I was longing for.
Yes. Like you felt it in you.
Yeah. It's like I was tired of just going on stage and playing a show for people and getting done and being like, that's it? Like,
ooh, that's good.
Okay, that was fun, but now what?
Yeah.
And now getting to come out and play a show, but there's something behind it. There's a meaning to what we're doing.
Yes.
And there's huge impact to that. We come on stage and it's not about us. It's about us turning everything to Jesus.
Yeah.
And really focusing all of our efforts and everything that we do on Him and getting everybody here to join in on that.
Yeah.
And having the Lord really walk us through that.
That's good.
Yeah.
You can clap for that. So on the beginning of the architecture of that has to do with song, and part of what folks will connect with, not just melody but lyric. When you are putting songs together, lyrics are music first. That's a joke. But when you're putting a song together, how conscious are you as you're putting a song together of sharing your own heart? Because the whole series here is called The Heart of the Artist. You're sharing your heart, but you're also trying to be responsible to leading a group of people. So one of the differences between like some kinds of art and part of what you're doing is like, it's not just self-expression and hoping people get it. You're conscious of your audience. Like, there are going to be people listening. You're taking people in a particular direction. Talk about like, you want to share what's going on with you, between you and the Lord. And you're also wanting to lead people, and you're doing that in word and in lyric. Like, what's that look like for you as you're writing a song? How conscious are you of your audience versus like what's going on in your own soul?
First of all, I just need to say, this is probably the coolest like Q&A time we've ever had. Dude, you are an incredible question asker. Like, dude, there's about 5 questions that you just normally get. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm learning stuff about them right now. I didn't even know. I'm glad I came to this Q&A. I just need you to make me a list of questions to ask on the bus, and I'm gonna act like I don't have it. I'm just gonna bring it up. So guys, what about, and just kind of insert one of these like baller questions. This is the question. It's awesome.
That's it right there. Talk about like as you're writing, like after 20 years, it's not like, you are making new fans, but you've got people who've been with you for a long time, and there's like a followership. You can clap for that. You're clapping for you. You can clap for you.
We love you. That's awesome.
You have a followership. You're conscious of them. What's it look like for you to pay attention to what's going on in you, pass that on, and like kind of pastor through lyric? What's that look like?
No, I think that's it. I think it's the criteria for me is that it's true.
Ooh.
Is that, and it's speaking from a place of experience.
That's good.
Even if it's just a desire, even if it's a want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In our lives. And I think the place that we connect, and we want to write songs from the places like you talk about, it's the connection, it's the human connection.
Yes.
That's where it happens. And a lot of that, honestly, is more in the struggle than it is in the solution, But it's encountering the Lord in the struggle and encountering the Lord in the struggle as the solution, right?
That's really good.
And it doesn't have to, we're finding out that it doesn't have to be something that's neatly wrapped up by the end of a 3.5 minute song, you know?
Yeah.
It can be this moment with God,
Yeah.
you know, that you have. And because we are in this together and because we do have the common ground of humanity, then that is what connects.
That's really good.
If that's really true, you know?
Yes.
Because you can hear when somebody's trying to write a song.
Come on now.
I think the best songs happen to you. You know what I mean? And
That's
I feel
really good.
I've
The
always,
best songs happen to you.
yeah, and then the response of it's really just the story of what just occurred, you know?
Yeah,
And
that's
the
really
ones,
good.
those are the ones you go running for, you know, the pen and paper for.
I love that. That's really good. The
Or
best
the
songs
voice
happen
memo
to
app. It doesn't have it on pen and paper anymore. You're like saying it into like voice memo or
you.
whatever.
Yeah,
That's
man.
where.
That's
where you
good. I love that.
get it. Yeah.
Let's spend a minute out here. I'm not going to pass the mic because I don't want to get that terrible, horrible noise that makes dogs go crazy. But I want to see a couple hands up of folks who want to throw a question at the stage, and I'll pick it up and I will answer you. Over in the corner, will you stand up? So what my friend just asked here is, you know, that their music moves her, inspires her, informs her, meets her in places, particular places where she's maybe in a place of need. What's it look like for them as artists who are creating the art? Like where are they receiving that same kind of thing? So we'll start here in the middle. What's it look like? Where are you just receiving something as an artist or as a person? Where do you get fed?
Yeah, sometimes that is through music, you know, through other artists and different people that we like. I mean, it could be anybody. It could be, you know, an unspoken song, you know, and they're playing today, or, you know, something like that. It's just somewhere that there's truth being spoken through that music, you know, that's meeting us where we are in that moment. Just like our songs may meet you where you are.
That's good.
You know, and sometimes that's with pastors, you know, or people that we know that are in ministry that we just really admire and look up to, that know that they really walk with the Lord and they really hear, you know, from Him. And we're like, hey, I'm hurting in this. I need you to help me walk through this, you know?
Yeah.
Help me figure this out, you know, and look to those people in those times.
That's good. Joe, can it be hard to like listen to music and take inspiration because you're thinking shop? Like if you're listening to music that's like, intended to feed a soul, you're kind of thinking about the songwriting part. Can it be difficult to to hear music and think of it as like inspirational, informative?
Yes, it can be, especially if you're in an assignment to actually learn that. And so it's like, there's lyrics going on, I realize that, but I'm really focusing on these changes that I have to do and at some point and whatever. So sometimes you can get bogged down in the analytics of it or the chord changes or whatever, you know, because you don't want to botch that and let it be that whole clanging cymbal for everything else and distract from the message.
There you go.
You know, so a lot of times, for me personally, sometimes the music itself is the distraction that I don't need at the moment. And sometimes it's on the back porch looking over a field and in the quietness of it. Or I have a lot of yard work I do at our property. And sometimes it's just while I'm actually doing a lot of that up and down the driveway and all this kind of stuff, that's all that I needed. Not the actual. I know people do that with Bluetooth devices and they're pumping music the whole time. It's like, no, I'd rather just not have that actually, because it keeps me more focused on actually the conversation that needs to happen. And then you can turn to the other though, and you know, over this morning at the house or whatever, you know, while I'm fixing coffee and everything, let's put this on in the background and just kind of let that be the atmosphere that's in the living room in that area. So yes to all of these things. It's like, what is that moment though?
Yeah, man.
That's
a really good line, by the way. Yes to all these things in their place.
In their place. That's
in their
right.
time. That's really, really good. That's cool. Couple more. Hands up right here. What's your name? So Beverly has been listening for the last few years, and she's wondering where the name Big Daddy Weave comes from. Where does the name Big Daddy Weave come from? I'm imagining, by the way, this is probably the first time you've heard this question.
I was going to say, that was one of the 5 that we were talking
about. Oh, I know.
That we were talking about. That was but yeah. No, I mean, it really kind of started with some nicknames. When the first time we ever got together to put together a jam session, which was on campus at University of Mobile, a little Baptist college in in the universe,
In the universe.
in Mobile, Alabama. and we're playing together, just jamming. I mean, like less than 15 minutes has gone by, and somebody comes by and goes, dude, I dig that there's a saxophone in there. I dig this sound. Dave Matthews was kind of a thing like back then or whatever.
Yes,
you know?
it was.
So, yeah, and so they're like, we got this other group coming, you know, you could put together a set and open for them. We're like, dude, we only been together 15 minutes. We already got our first gig. Like,
You were that good.
come on,
You
you
were
know what I
that
mean?
good.
It was like, things are looking up, you know? But that's when we should have stopped and prayed, right?
Right.
Sometimes you just rush past, you know, because then they said, well, what do you want us to put on the flyer? And we decided to get real cute about it, you know what I'm saying? And so,
Are you joking right now?
yeah, no, I'm not joking right now, because like if you're my size in South Alabama, you are Big Daddy. You don't have like a vote on that, like, hey, Big Daddy. There's a guy that came to our church every Sunday. We're just about to start. It would always throw me off as I'm about to start. He goes, hey, Big Daddy, from like the back of the thing, you know? It's like, it's just who you are. And my last name's Weaver. And so we've been messing around. I had this kind of made up joke name, right?
Yes.
It was Big Daddy Weave and the Institution, right?
Wait, come on.
Dude.
And the institution?
Yeah, it was fantastically outlandish or whatever, right? And so which sounds like
By the way,
which
fantastic-
sounds like it was Lucky Charms or something. You know what I mean? It's like
Although
fantastically
Fantastically Outlandish could have been a good band name as well. I mean,
We're thinking about that as a
Making
side,
the switch.
a side project.
Ladies and gentlemen,
we're
Fantastically
gonna ask you to
Outlandish.
be in it to ask the questions. Actually,
There you
it's
go.
gonna be so awesome.
okay, good.
Yeah, and no, that was it. I mean, so they started putting on flyers. It just started happening. We were just going. We started getting calls. One event led to more events. Like our last year as the indie band, like our third year together, we played like 180 dates.
Yeah.
And we never called anybody to ask them. You know, it was like
Yeah.
the Lord is the one who brought it. That was His proof to us that this is what we're supposed to do.
That's
you know?
good.
So the moral of that is be careful what you name your group, because you could be here 23 years later still answering that question and people going like, well, that's ridiculous, you know? Because then people would try to Christianize it more. You know, they would be like, you know, I think that God is Big Daddy, you know? And it's like,
You're like, no, I'm Big
and he's
Daddy,
weaving us,
actually.
he's weaving us together into the tapestry of the church.
Hey,
And
if that's what you're gonna do with it, then roll with that, bro. But
And I was
no.
like, yo, I'm pretty sure like the last guy who called God Big Daddy got smote or something. You know what I mean? It's like, but then like after all this time, it started happening because
Yes.
we started seeing God do like crazy things, like Book of Acts, like looking things, you know,
Yeah.
in front of us. We're like, man, He can do exceedingly abundantly more than we ask or think. He's big,
Yes.
right?
That's good.
And then Holy Spirit enables us to cry, Abba Father, which is Daddy, right?
Yes, it's good.
And literally, we see Him call people across age lines, across denominational lines, across all kinds of lines into this thing,
Yeah.
and to encourage what we feel part of our reason is to encourage and to help support the bride, you know?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's,
Which leads me to this, and we'll come back to audience questions in a minute here. A bunch of years ago, I mean, you guys have been around long enough to know, like years and years ago, GMA Week was like a
my
much,
gosh.
much bigger deal.
yeah. So
Uh,
what does that stand for actually, right?
Right.
Gospel Music Association Week, right? But we called it, you know, because it was like everybody just like grasping for attention, and we called it Give Me Attention Week is what it was. That was
Well, yes.
that was like our joke name for it, right? You know,
And that was the thing. So I was invited to go. This would be a question that's not about me, but I was invited to go. I was on a label with a guy named Frank Tate, and Frank Tate came to me at one point and said, "Have you ever thought about playing music for a living?" I said, "No. Do you think the songs are good?" He goes, "No, the songs are bad, but I like you." I was like, "I don't know what that means." So several months later, I've quit my job as a teacher, and I'm in Nashville, Tennessee at GMA Week, and I'm in this room with I'd never played in front of people before. Like I played in front of my mom, legit. And I'm in this room, and the lineup is and you guys, some of y'all remember this thing. It's Sarah Kelly, who's like this monster singer, and there's a songwriter named Eli who was crushing at the time, and this band I never heard of. I'm blanking on their name right now. The lead singer's name is Mark, and lost his voice. What's his name?
down here.
Audio Adrenaline.
Audio.
I'm like
Yeah,
all these
the
bands,
other Mark didn't
and
lose his voice,
and
right?
all the label heads would get up, and there's a room for 200 people, music buyers and store buyers, and the label heads would get up and they'd hand out a bunch of free stuff, and they'd be like, okay, behind me is Sarah Kelly, She has a voice delivered straight from heaven. She's the greatest thing ever to happen to music. Her record it's as if Tom Petty and the Beatles got together and made something, and then they would pass the mic, and then she'd sing, and everyone would applaud. Frank gets up, like I'm watching this happen. Frank gets up, he stands in front. I'm behind him with a guitar. He goes, all right, I'm Frank Tate from 5 Minute Walk Records. I didn't bring you any free stuff because we don't feel like we should have to bribe you. I was like, bro, do you have friends? And then he says this. He goes, behind me is Justin McRoberts, and he's the artist we'll be focusing on this year. And then he says this, no joke, dead serious. He goes, I'll be honest, he's not very good right now. And the room did that, like, ha, ha, ha. And then he said, but here's what I'm betting on. I think 3 to 5 years from now, most of the artists you've seen this morning probably won't be around anymore because this is hard. I think Justin will be around 15 to 20 years from now, and he'll be making really, really good art. And so I'm making a long-term investment. And if you make it with me, great. If you don't, I don't care. And he walked off the stage. And then I had to play a song which super sucked. But the table that was set for me was like, I had early success-ish, and it went okay, and then I had some failure, and none of it mattered as much because I was thinking like long-term. You're 23 years into this thing. There was like, and part of what I'm getting is there was kind of the humorous, like, we're in a band, we're gonna call ourselves this thing, but like 23 years as a rock band is real. No one does that. Like, it doesn't last this long for pretty much anybody. Right now, like, you've kind of won the game, right? The game is like to do it to make a living. Like, people are like, I want to make a living for 2 years as an artist. You've won the game. What does success look like for Big Daddy Weave now and going forward? As you measure, what does it look like for you guys to be successful as a band? What does it look like for you actually to win, to succeed? Like, how are you measuring we're doing well? How do you get that internal, well done, good and faithful servant?
Man, dude, that's fantastic. Dude, I just want to be your friend, man. You know what I mean? We just doing it after.
Pleasure to meet you.
Listen, and the answer is simple, and we don't always get it right.
Come on now.
And the times when we are not getting right is when we are most dissatisfied with what this is. But the only real answer, and on the years ago, God asked me this same question.
Come on now.
And on the blackboard of my mind, he wrote success equals, and he wanted me to take a stab at filling in the other side.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I tried to think of super like Christian sounding things to do. And he just stopped me, and he just goes, success equals obedience.
Yeah, man.
What did I tell you to do? Did you go and do that?
Yeah.
You're not in control of the outcome, right?
That's
He's
right.
in control of the whole thing.
That's good.
But were you faithful to do what it was that he said to do, you know?
That's really good.
And if they see me ever get in angst, it's over being scared that we're somehow not doing what God wants, you know? Not
That's
because we need to accomplish something big for him, but we want to be in line with him.
Yes.
You know? Because that's where ministry really happens.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You can give it up for that, yes. Heart of the Artist is the name of the thing. We talked outside a little bit about, the things that are on your heart as a band. One of them, there's a moment, a long moment that you're in as a band and as a family. We've talked about home. We've talked about what success and faithfulness looks like. So like 20 plus years in it together. You're in a bit of a moment now that like some of y'all will already know bits and pieces of, but can you let us into like an actual like personal in your heart moment you're in right now that I would love to kind of invite all of us into to share with you as a band and as people? Like what's going on with you guys right now? There's I'm setting up to you're in a tough spot.
Yeah.
What's going on?
If you followed us for any amount of time, man, my brother Jay plays bass for Big Daddy Weave, and man, he's just been through a terrible time in his health. It caused him to become a double amputee. He lost both of his feet in 2016. Man, in recovering from that, I'm telling you, he came back out on the road. I see him praying for people all the time. Man, the Lord's just moving mightily. I'm going to share a story about that later this evening, probably. But man, it took a downward slope. was on dialysis. His kidneys are failing, you know. He would come on the tour bus and find a way of like mobile dialysis, you know, take it on the road. I would still see him pray for people and hear reports of how Jesus healed those people, all of this stuff later. Just a couple weeks ago, he kind of had to make a decision to come off the road. And when he said that's what was happening, which is what needed to happen, man, I felt it break him. It's something I hadn't heard in his voice. And he, you know, then it was followed by the peace of God, man, his surrender in that. Just a couple days ago, man, well, actually just yesterday, he was rushed to the ER. He's in ICU right now. I couldn't get a hold of him all last night. I was kind of frantic to get a hold of him this morning, but I saw I had missed a call from him in the wee hours. And he had called me and left on the voicemail, I'm praying for you guys in New Hampshire. And he said, dude, he just said, God says to say to you this, I've got all of this.
There's been a great long conversation for the last, 25 years about like the line between what's rock and roll, what's worship, is it music, and the whole thing. And I'm just gonna, at this point in my life, I'm like, I'm just gonna let Jesus answer some questions and say like, I'm gonna play some songs sometimes, and if people do the thing, great, whatever. There is a bit of encouragement. Part of what it means, and most of us who've been in the conversation know, part of what the worship word means has to do with worthiness.
Yes.
Has to do with the worthiness specifically of the Lord. Part of what oftentimes gets missed, and we've talked about the industry side of things a little bit, part of what oftentimes gets missed is because folks like you get dehumanized, either by like, you know, the way you present it or by the way sometimes the way we often present ourselves, is we miss the work of Christ in us.
Yeah.
And it is the work of Christ in us
Yes.
that actually is the entry point into the, like, I'm connected to the worthy one
Yes.
by the work that he's doing in me.
Yes.
And so this moment in which there's like, this is a human moment for you.
Yeah.
Like you have to stop what you're saying because you're busted up because a guy you love is in a really tough spot. And then you're gonna go over there and lay it on the line. Which means you get to show up and do a really human moment. And this is what makes it not a show. This is what makes it actual art. It's people connecting with people and believing that Christ has something in that is deeper, better, stronger, and more glorious than we can possibly imagine. So when you show up later tonight, this is my push. It's not just a show. It's not just the rock and roll. You're connecting with human beings in whom Christ has done and is doing a work that we all get to participate in. And if it is not that, then maybe we don't use the word worship so much. Somebody say amen?
Amen, dude. Amen.
What does it look like? Real quick answer from Joe all the way down. What's it look like for you to have a supportive audience? What's it look like for you? What do you need from the people who've been paying attention to you for 15, 16, 20 years? What do you need from the folks who are paying attention to you going forward? Like, what's it look like for you to have a successful or a supportive audience? What's that look like?
I think just right now, like as a family, we're hurting, and we totally believe in prayer. And so by all means, we have some very specific things that are going on, so we definitely invite you in on that. And that's, I mean, in my own personal life, I've seen where prayer has rocked the entire situation and flipped it upside down. It doesn't even make sense how it turns out the way that it does, other than God intervened and he allowed everyone to be a part of that was willing to do so. So by all means, and tell everyone else that you know that are also prayer warriors, not just like, hey, yeah, sure, whatever. No, the ones that will go after it, that, we encourage that, we invite that in to come along with us.
It's kind of hard to top that. I mean,
Yeah,
just from the, I mean, that's the heart of any interaction I think that we would hope to have.
Yes.
You know, is to be the body together, and we are just because we're on this stage, we are no different than you guys.
Amen.
And I think this proves that. So
Good. Let's wrap right over there. Will you guys give these guys a round of applause? We thank Big Daddy Wave for being here tonight. Thank you for being here. We'll see you at their set in a little bit. Amen and amen. Have a great night.